So, today I wanted to share with you guys my favorite chef in the whole wide world. Not a single one of her recipes makes any sense. They often use conflicting and honestly very perplexing flavor combinations, but I love them so much. Sandra Lee is, in my humble opinion, the greatest celebrity chef who ever lived. Not because her recipes are by any means good, but just the sheer chaotic energy and the utter confidence with which she puts together ingredients that definitely don't go together. And her famous cocktails, which are 99% booze most of the time. Honestly, she's guilty of this in her regular food recipes also, but we'll get to that. Plus, her absolutely unhinged tablescapes just makes her the most iconic chef to come out of Food Network, and possibly in all of human history. Barefoot Contessa? Don't know her. Aunt Sandy is my Polaris, my North Star whenever I have the urge to throw a dinner party that will ensure none of my guests will ever want to return, or alternatively get them so drunk that they won't remember the eldritch horrors I served at the dinner table while following one of Sandra's deranged recipes. But don't get me wrong, I'm so glad Sandra Lee exists, because she's pure serotonin. Whenever I'm sad or feeling down, I fire up the old YouTube and search for one of her recipe videos, and they are magic.
Chicken cherry baguette burgers.
For context, she had a show called Semi-Homemade Cooking with Sandra Lee, which ran from 2003 to 2011, which in my opinion contains some of her greatest hits. I vaguely remember my mom watching this back in the day and always wondered why we never actually used any of her recipes, and well, now I know. And it's through Semi-Homemade that Sandra Lee basically became a household name here in the US. Sandra Lee has an interesting lore behind her. She actually didn't even want a cooking show, because her true craft lay in interior decor.
My menu was simple, but my tablescape is elaborate.
Yes. But for reasons that are unknown to me, she was given a whole-ass cooking show on Food Network, and then another one, and then several others after that. She's published a bunch of cookbooks. I don't know if any of them contain actually viable recipes, but they're out there. They exist in the world. Actually, I will amend my prior statement a little. We all know why a woman who actually can't cook was given multiple seasons of a cooking show. Pretty white woman privilege is alive and well in the Sandra Lee saga, but you know what? In her specific case, I'm very glad it all happened, because honestly, the world would be a dark, dark place without her. There's just something oddly comforting about watching her throw nonsensical combinations of foods together, or pouring an entire bottle of vanilla vodka into her cocktail pitcher, all while smiling cheerfully at the camera, standing in a brightly lit kitchen looking out into the Windows XP background world, and her outfit always matches her kitchen, and every episode is a different theme, with a different colored KitchenAid stand mixer. Side note, I really hope they had some sort of contract with KitchenAid to borrow a different stand mixer for each episode, because they cost hundreds of dollars a piece, and it seems like Sandy's got one in every single color under the sun, including this violently orange one. So today I wanted to show you guys some of my very favorite Aunt Sandy recipes, and why I think they deserve all the flowers. I think most, if not all of these, are from her Semi-Homemade show, which is based on Sandy's philosophy of 70% store-bought or ready-made, and 30% fresh, scratch ingredients with, and I quote, creative touches.
Woo!
So I think I'll go in the same order that she would present her creations in her Semi-Homemade show. So I'll do the appetizers / main courses first, then desserts, her famously lethal cocktails, and finally her tablescapes, which are truly something else. So come along with me as I journey into the bizarre and wonderful world of Sandra Lee. Number 1, cherry chicken baguette burgers. Yes, you heard that right. This is not, in fact, a prank. Sandra Lee is seriously looking us in the eye and telling us to mix cherries into ground chicken and make a burger out of it. So this recipe was an email submission from an alleged fan named Miss Beth, who instructs Sandy to chop frozen cherries that are then thawed into this mush, along with some canned sweet peppers, which are then dumped with salt and pepper into a pile of lean ground chicken.
Thank you very much, Miss Beth.
On second thought, someone did get pranked here. It was Sandy. Also, I must note that much of this show was filmed squarely in the 2000s low-fat era, so you're going to see a lot of emphasis on lean meats and Aunt Sandy favorite, cooking spray.
There is a very, very little fat in the chicken.
Because God forbid you cook with a little olive oil or ghee. You'll never fit into your low-rise jeans and lace camis otherwise. So all this sweet cherry and pepper mush is added to the chicken, and also rosemary's in there for some reason. I mean, who can resist the classic combo of cherries and chicken? I love that Sandy is also trying to convince herself that these two ingredients go together as she's making this.
Peppers, all that flavor, cherries. I bet kids love eating these.
I bet kids love eating these. That little pause there, it says a lot. So she cooks the burgers, then places them on baguettes that have been smeared with a mixture of cherry jam and mayo. Then plops a big old tomato and lettuce right on top. Look, I actually think fruit and savory do go together in a lot of dishes, like brie and jam grilled cheese, or tamarind date chutney. But you have to be light on the fruit part. This is just so much cherry, even in the mayo. Like you are going to bite into this burger and only taste cherry, because that non-fat chicken is going to add zero flavor. Now that's what I call cuisine. But normal people would call it a fever dream. Roasted tomato basil soup. Before I begin, let me take a second to admire this 70s Farrah Fawcett blowout like Slay Queen. I love a good creamy tomato soup, and apparently so does Sandy, but with a bit of a twist. In classic semi-ho fashion, she fries up a bag of pre-chopped frozen onions with just the teensiest bit of pre-minced garlic, which I have to say feels a little light because tomato soup is the place to be more heavy on the garlic, to give it more flavor than just tomato. But I'm not Aunt Sandy, so what do I know? She doesn't even fully cook down the onions. Like those were white when they came out of the bag, and they're still completely white when she adds in all her other ingredients, which, to no one's surprise, includes canned roasted tomatoes. But I won't fault her for this because I use canned tomatoes in my soup all the time. What I will point out, however, is that she adds a ton of vermouth to the mix. She adds an entire half cup to what is probably only like 4 cups of soup in there. This soup is 20% booze. And then she doesn't even let the alcohol boil off before ladling it out into a bowl.
And then this has to simmer for about 10 minutes after it's all combined.
Gotta love Aunt Sandy. She couldn't wait for cocktail time, so she had to do the 2-in-1 combo of including it in her soup. We love a time-saving, resourceful girly. Chicken Caesar focaccia sandwiches. On this episode, Aunt Sandy's hosting some sort of women's charity luncheon, and because the luncheon is outdoors, so is Sandy's kitchen. I love when she's on location in some of these episodes. I mean, I'll always be partial to the literal desktop background she has permanently affixed to her kitchen set window, but being outside is always a nice change. Today's main course dish is chicken Caesar sandwiches on focaccia bread, which, in theory, sounds pretty good, pretty normal, but fear not. Sandy will always have some sort of weird trick up her sleeve. Surprisingly, she actually cooks some chicken on a grill, which, in all honesty, looks pretty nice. She then throws it onto some store-bought Caesar salad, and because we're still in her 2000s low-fat era, she tosses in the most minuscule amount of dressing into it. This ends up making the salad look pretty dry, which she then puts on store-bought focaccia bread. The way she puts these sandwiches together doesn't make any sense, because she tosses the salad first and then dumps it on the whole focaccia and then cuts it into individual sandwiches. There's no even distribution of any of the salad ingredients. It would have been better to spread the dressing evenly on the bread first, then layer the chicken and then the salad, but that's not what Aunt Sandy does here. There's a big chance that these luncheon ladies could just have dry lettuce or croutons in their sandwich and no chicken at all. They'll have neither the chicken nor the Caesar.
The ladies are gonna love this salad.
But at least they'll have a big old sprig of rosemary and a juicy tomato in there. Yum, yum, yum. Happy lunching, ladies. Tortilla casserole. In this episode, Aunt Sandy is preparing a semi-ho classic, tortilla casserole, featuring soggy corn tortillas that have been soaked in broth, topped off with a stew made of ground turkey and then layered with cheese and baked until all melted in the oven. Okay, first off, why do you need to soak the tortillas if they're already going to be covered in wet stew? Pre-soaking them like this will probably just ensure that they fall apart completely in the oven into mush. And now the stew.
So it's a whole pound of ground turkey.
Ah, yes. Lean ground turkey, a traditional Mexican favorite, accompanied with classic semi-ho pre-chopped frozen onions and peppers, and also fresh sliced mushrooms from the grocery store. So fresh, in fact, that they haven't even been washed before being dumped into the saucepan. And now for the piece de resistance, canned artichokes, which add a nice, fresh, fantastic flavor.
And these will add just a nice, fresh, fantastic flavor.
And plain non-fat yogurt. 2000s low-fat culture strikes again. Aunt Sandy insists here that the non-fat yogurt is a great replacement for sour cream, to which I say, no. Ah yes, yogurt and artichokes. More traditional Mexican favorites. This is when Aunt Sandy's inner Yoda comes out.
Nice and hearty this casserole is going to be.
Nice and hearty this casserole is going to be. She also adds some flour in an attempt to thicken her watery low-fat stew, but it fails miserably and remains very fluid by the time she ladles it out onto her soggy tortillas. Delicioso. Spicy cashew dip. You know, I'm somewhat of a dip connoisseur, but I have to say, I've never seen one quite like this. Aunt Sandy is putting together a spicy, savory cashew dip, insisting that each ingredient has really nice flavor.
Really delicious. It adds great flavor and really add flavor.
What are the ingredients, you may ask? Well, certainly not too many cashews. Those seem like almost an afterthought when you account for the 2 blocks of cream cheese, entire can of coconut milk, and large scoop of peanut butter. And then to spice it all up, some chili paste, curry powder, and lime juice. It's all mixed up and tossed into a slow cooker, so all these nonsensical ingredients have a chance to slowly combine together.
Cashew dip, remember, with the peanut butter in it and also that cream cheese?
Yeah, I'm trying real hard to forget it, Aunt Sandy. I'm not really sure why it's even called cashew dip. It's almost entirely cream cheese, and there's more peanut butter than cashew. I also really don't think these flavors go together, like, at all. It's vaguely Thai, with the coconut milk and the peanut and chili lime combo, but then the cream cheese in there just makes no sense. Make it make sense, Sandy. By the time she scoops it out of the slow cooker, it just looks like a poorly made hummus. In fact, store-bought hummus would have been a better and cheaper option than whatever this is. Store-bought hummus would have been very semi-ho as well, and we have to be on theme. Cucumber tea sandwich flowers. Aunt Sandy is outdoors again in this episode. She's on location. The wind is really winding there, and she's preparing a tea party for children. True, little finger sandwiches would probably be really fun for kids to eat, especially when they're cut up in little shapes like flowers. Love this as a concept. The execution, however, leaves a little to be desired. Or a lot. Salmon cream cheese is the condiment of choice here, to which chives and capers are then added and mashed into for even more flavor. Because when I go to a tea party, I want my cucumber sandwiches to taste of the briny sea, and for my breath to smell like that long after. Very classy, I think. She also chops tarragon leaves into her butter, and that's what she spreads onto her bread? Sandy, what are we doing here? Tarragon butter? With that salmon caper cream cheese? What child would conceivably want to eat this? I don't want to eat this. Not even for science. But I will say they are very pretty to look at, and that's all that counts in this world. So Aunt Sandy did have a lesson for us after all. Style over substance. Cheers to that. Hot dates. This was for a Valentine's Day episode and is probably one of my favorite Aunt Sandy videos because she's not alone. She has a guest, who is another alleged fan like our Miss Beth from the Cherry Chicken Burger travesty. But this time she actually got him on the set, and he's a guy.
From this adorable semi-homemaker, a guy.
His name is Steve, and he's the full package.
Steve cooks, he cleans, he's perfect. Perfect date material.
Oh, definitely.
He cooks, he cleans, he does whatever Sandy tells him to.
The tablescape's all set out back for you.
That's my gift.
Yes.
Steve did the tablescape. I had to find you a wife.
For a very clearly gay man who cooks and cleans must be in want of a wife. I love how cute and flirty Sandy is with him, but alas, she's taken.
But I'm taken.
By the way, earlier in this episode, she's describing her first date with her current sweetie pie.
Set me up on a blind date. And now my little sweetie pie, we've been together for a couple years.
Who, at the time of recording, was Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York. Yikes! Yeah, another piece of Aunt Sandy lore. She was actually the de facto First Lady of New York while she dated Andrew Cuomo, who I think she was with for like 14 years. I think before that she was married to a billionaire 20 years her senior. I'm glad she got out of both situations. That's the only conclusion I can draw there. Ah, I almost forgot to talk about the food. Silly me. Got caught up in the drama of Sandra trying to set up a gay man with a wife. Classic 2000s vibes. She makes some bacon-wrapped dates filled with nuts and cheese, and Steve here makes some low-fat buffalo baked chicken. All in all, these are not bad recipes. They actually look quite edible, and dare I say, even delicious? I'd actually probably make a vegetarian version of these, so good job, Sandy and Steve, our iconic kitchen queens. Upside down apple pie skillet. We have now arrived at the desserts portion of the video, and this one does not disappoint. This is from the same episode as her roasted tomato basil soup, and the theme is all about comfort food, which to Aunt Sandy is a semi-hoe apple pie baked in a skillet. Seems normal enough, no? She throws in a stick of butter, cinnamon, and a ton of brown sugar to the skillet, but then adds canned apple pie filling, which presumably has been pre-sweetened. It's not even like a time-saving measure because right after that she tosses in some fresh apples that she's peeled and cut into slices. So I don't understand why the canned apple pie filling even needed to be in there.
And these apples give it a nice, fresh feeling.
It's also going to cook down way further than the fresh apples, so this pie is going to be an overly sweet, mushy mess. And to add to the diabetesness, Sandy has soaked the fresh apples in lemon lime soda. So, Sprite. She soaked the apples in Sprite. Even more sugar. Who needs a pancreas anyway? They're so overrated. She mixes this all together and blankets the skillet in store-bought pie crust dough. And if you want that shiny exterior, simply baste it with
An apple schnapps, that would be nice too. Whatever you have is going to work fantastic.
egg wash who? If Aunt Sandy has a will to throw booze into any recipe, she will find a way. Trust. I will say this looks very pretty when she takes it out of the oven, but all of your teeth might fall out from all the sugar in this, so there's that. Tiramisu à l'orange, or as Aunt Sandy says,
My tiramisu a la orange.
tiramisu à l'orange. We are back outside again. It's the same episode as the one as the luncheon ladies. And what a dessert they got. Tiny cups of semi-hoe tiramisu chock full of the flavors of orange and...
Instant espresso.
Sorry, what?
Instant espresso.
Yeah, they really did a voiceover for espresso at multiple points in this episode. Probably because Sandy kept saying espresso instead. Strange that they left this in, though.
You're going to use mascarpone cheese, but I'm using...
Mascarpone sounds like a gangster. A gangster who steals your good tiramisu and leaves this in its place. As the top comments in this video say, this deserves the Oscar for masterful sound design. So let's talk about this recipe. Store-bought ladyfingers soaked in espresso and orange liqueur to the point of complete sogginess. The mascarpone cream, oh my bad, mascarpone, is non-existent. She's replaced it with instant cheesecake pudding mix, which she flavors with orange extract. The entire country of Italy in shambles. Mount Vesuvius has erupted, there's ash falling everywhere and everything's gone up in flames. That's the power of Sandy's tiramisu a la orange. It's not to be used lightly. Baked potato ice cream. Have you ever felt the urge to eat ice cream that looks exactly like a baked potato? No? Just me and Sandy, huh? And before you say, Suchi, nobody has actually ever asked for this ever. Well, actually, it is a thing. It's a real dessert invented by some guy over in Idaho. A likely place for a baked potato-themed dessert to be, all things considered. Sandy takes a whole tub of vanilla ice cream and molds it in the shape of a potato, but then puts it back in the freezer because
it needs to stay nice and cold and hard.
Nice and cold and hard this ice cream will be. And then she prepares the butter. So she takes yellow lemon flavored icing and struggles to find the perfect mold to shape it into butter. But then a stroke of genius hits her.
I was trying to figure out what would give me the shape of butter. And I looked at this and thought, that's it.
Who would have thought that putting something in the butter dish would give it the exact shape of butter? It's incredible. So she takes the potato-shaped vanilla ice cream back out again and then dumps cocoa powder all over it, which is supposed to be the skin. Ah, yes. I love eating entire mouthfuls of straight cocoa dust while trying to get to my potato-shaped ice cream. I'm also not sure how well the cocoa dust will go with the lemon icing butter. Probably would have been better to just add yellow food coloring to vanilla icing. But yeah, let's just plop that lemony butter right into the cocoa. Yum! And now for the final touches, whipped cream as the sour cream, and topped off with some chopped pistachios, which she's dyed green because those are her chives. Sandy, please, why are we out here dyeing pistachios of all things green? Why do we need to do that? Actually, what would probably have been a more convincing chive is taking coconut flakes and dyeing those green. That would have made more textural sense. But we are in the land of semi-homemade now, where the laws of nature no longer apply. Riviera trifle. In this episode, Aunt Sandy is treating us to the flavors of the French Riviera, and she's making a trifle for dessert. And if you don't know, trifle typically has layers of custard, cake, and fresh fruit. But we're still sticking to the semi-ho philosophy here, so no custard for us today. We're whipping out the instant pudding mix again. But this time we're also adding fresh juice from canned fruit for extra flavor.
When making vanilla instant pudding, add some fresh juice from canned fruit.
I see Aunt Sandy loves her oxymorons. It's like jumbo shrimp. So she adds the juice from canned fruit into the pudding mix, which honestly just makes it super watery and not thick like pudding at all. Or custard. Then she takes coconut macaroons and mushes those up by hand because those are her cake layer, which, I don't know, feels like more work than simply buying a plain pound cake and cutting it up. And because we are in our vodka aunt era, she adds some berry liqueur to the coconut macaroons, and they looked quite moist and sweet before, but are surely soggy beyond repair now. So into her little dessert cups goes the goopy instant pudding, the damp and boozy coconut macaroons, and the finishing touch, the canned fruit on top. The fruits in question are mango, papaya, and pineapple? Ah yes, traditional flavors of the French Riviera. I must have my geography wrong because I could have sworn those were all tropical fruits and not Mediterranean ones. So there we have it, Riviera trifle. Wet and juicy and tropical, just like the south of France. Triple orange angel food cake. We have now reached the angel food cake section of the Sandra Lee cinematic universe. Sandy famously loves buying pre-made angel food cakes and doctoring them up with all sorts of weird additives.
Now, normally you know that when I make an angel food cake, I use a store-bought angel food cake.
But this particular one is unique in that it began its life as a boxed cake mix. This was from one of her earlier seasons where, again, the low-fat plague was running rampant in society, and Aunt Sandy was not spared. And she's out here gushing about how it's the perfectly healthful dessert option, perfect for those who are watching their waistlines. And like, Auntie, please, there's like still a ton of sugar in this. Angel food cakes are almost nothing but sugar and flour. So here Sandy is taking a boxed angel food cake mix and adds the zest from an orange and also the juice from canned oranges. Not sure why she couldn't just juice the orange that she just zested. And then plops the canned bits of orange throughout the batter for a little surprise in every bite. Which, again, why didn't you just cut up the orange that you just zested? Why is the can of oranges even necessary here? But little did I know that this was just the beginning of a very perplexing tale. By the way, that batter has been poured into a bundt pan greased using another Aunt Sandy staple, low-fat cooking spray. She bakes all that batter up into a fluffy cake that's guaranteed to taste like little more than sweetened air with a hint of orange, and adds Cool Whip, another semi-ho staple, as her frosting. The reason it's so loose and watery in texture is because she's added orange extract to it, so she's adding a liquid to a thing that really, really doesn't need any more liquid. Look at it. It's like a cloud, and just as flavorless. And just when you think the nightmare is over, she shoves a mint forest right into the center of the cake. Why is there so much mint in the center of this cake? It's like she wants her dinner guests to wade through a green jungle before finally getting to taste her low-fat orange monstrosity. New recipe idea for the next time you're bored of decorating your cakes with plain old frosting. Reach for your nearest houseplant as a center garnish. It's sure to be a winner. Pecan cinnamon angel food cake. We are back outside again, this time on the shore and ready to set sail. And nothing says East Coast summer more than a cinnamon pecan angel food cake. Nothing at all. Lobster roll who? Italian ice? Found dead in a ditch. So Sandy whips out her trusty store-bought angel food cake and...
Take your top off.
Whoa, Sandy. Slow down. We haven't even gotten to cocktail time yet. She slices it in 2 uneven layers, but we quickly find out why the bottom layer is bigger, because we're going to stuff it with a surprise filling.
Now come in here with your fingers.
Girl, I love that she tells us to handle the cake with utmost care as it's very delicate and airy,
Take this off gently. It's very spongy.
and then immediately starts clawing out entire chunks of it with her bare hands. The filling is made with whipped cream cheese, cinnamon, brown sugar, and pecans, and also the chunks of cake that she'd ripped out, and stirs that all together, and the end result looks like cat food. Or tuna salad that's been left out in the sun too long. I guess they're pretty much the same thing. Pretty sure Aunt Sandy here has also realized it looks disgusting and tries to rationalize it by saying...
And it doesn't have to be perfect because no one's going to see it.
And she keeps saying, and can I tell you?
Not only is great outside, but can I tell you around the holiday season?
And I'm like, no, Aunt Sandy, I don't think you should tell me anything. But she tells us anyways. Bless her heart. So she stuffs the filling right on in there and puts her top back on because she's realized we haven't in fact gotten to cocktail time yet. And then ices it with her favorite Cool Whip and some more cinnamon and pecans. Lovely. So I actually did test this one out myself. I got a store-bought angel food cake and everything, followed Aunt Sandy's instructions to a T, and yes, I can indeed confirm that the filling looks like tuna salad. A most unfortunate resemblance. Honestly though, this wasn't half bad. I do think the cake I bought was a bit too dry and bready, which is apparently not what an angel food cake is supposed to be. I wouldn't know, I've never actually had angel food cake before this. It was also overly sweet and kind of flavorless to me, but the tuna salad-esque filling did do a nice job of balancing out that sweetness because the tang from the cream cheese and the cinnamon flavor. I was not very impressed though with how goopy the Cool Whip icing was. I think this would have turned out way better using actual whipped cream, but the taste wasn't bad. Overall, I gave it like a 6 out of 10. An actually edible recipe? In my semi-whole world? It's more likely than you think. Kwanzaa cake. We have finally reached Sandra Lee's magnum opus, the reason for her enduring fame and infamy in equal measure, the dish famously called eye-searing and a war crime by Anthony Bourdain himself, the crown jewel of her dessert disasters, the Kwanzaa cake. This was part of her holiday special in which she made 3 different angel food cake travesties, but this Kwanzaa one really does take the cake. Kwanzaa, if you didn't know, is a harvest festival celebrated by the African diaspora. So let's see what Aunt Sandy is cooking up for us. We have a classic store-bought angel food cake, store-bought vanilla frosting from a can, to which she then adds a teaspoon of cinnamon, which by the way is the biggest teaspoon of cinnamon I've ever seen. She also adds cocoa powder and inexplicably vanilla extract to what was already a vanilla frosting.
2 tablespoons of cocoa. Everybody has this because of course you're making hot chocolate this holiday season.
Why did that sound like a threat? I guess why not just buy a chocolate frosting and add the cinnamon? Why start with a vanilla base and then have to add in all these things? Not very semi-ho of you, Aunt Sandy. I'd just like to point out, she doesn't even mix in all these additions properly. You can literally see the streaks of cinnamon and cocoa powder everywhere. And so she frosts the cake with her poorly mixed canned icing, and then she adds the showstopper, canned apple pie filling. She just dumps it straight on in there, cold and goopy, a perfect complement to that streaky frosting. Just... how does apple cinnamon go with chocolate icing at all? I guess I just don't have the vision, like Sandy does. And then to top it all off, these big honkin' Kwanzaa candles that are comically too large for the cake, and pumpkin seeds and corn nuts as the garnish. By the way, she's calling the corn nuts acorns. Please do not eat raw acorns. They are toxic. Ah yes, apple cinnamon and chocolate frosting topped with pumpkin seed and corn. Beloved flavors of the African diaspora. Oddly enough, the corn nuts are the one sort of accurate ingredient in this entire cake, because corn is used often in African dishes, but... wasn't this supposed to be a light and airy angel food cake? Why is it making a thudding sound on the plate? I see Sandy indulged in a bit too much cocktail time before filming this. There is no sober explanation for this cake. None at all. Doreen's butter rum coffee. Speaking of cocktail time, we have finally arrived at Aunt Sandy's most treasured segment of her show, where she mixes up absolutely lethal concoctions designed to get everyone wasted as fast as possible. First up, we have Doreen's Butter Rum Coffee, named after Aunt Sandy's friend Doreen, who allegedly came up with this recipe. Don't worry, Sandy. This is a safe space. I too blame my unhinged creations on others at times. We are back on the same episode as that boozy tomato soup and diabetically sweet apple pie skillet. That 70s blowout is working overtime here. So now she's making us a cocktail using hot coffee as the base. And if you didn't know before, Sandy has just one approach to making her cocktails, and that is to just keep pouring. She starts out with a pot of hot coffee, which is then immediately cooled down to tepid by adding in like half a bottle of room temperature butterscotch schnapps, vanilla rum, and Irish cream. The thing with Aunt Sandy is that she never gives precise measurements to any of her cocktails. She'll just say parts of this or that, or to just keep pouring until your heart tells you to stop, which, depending on your situation in life, might not be for several seconds. Oddly enough, in this video, she even points out that the coffee pot has measurements, but never actually tells us, so we just have to watch and do the math ourselves. Sandy really said, following a recipe is for losers. Learn to do mental math instead. She's always keeping us on our toes, and I love that. By the way, Sandy's favorite way to mix her drinks is stirring them together in a glass jar with a wooden spoon, and this is no different. She's never heard of a shaker in her life. Look at how the Irish cream immediately curdles on impact with the hot coffee. Then she adds some oily Cool Whip and toffee crumbs to the top of this tepid, ridiculously spiked, and now completely curdled coffee. I love a cup of coffee that can also degrease my car engine. Mango Peach Sangria. One thing about Sandra Lee, she loves whole pieces of fruit just floating in her deadly cocktails, and this sangria possibly has the most fruit ever. She dumps entire bags of frozen peaches and mangoes in it as her ice, because God forbid you accidentally swallow a bit of ice versus choking on a clump of defrosted fruit. To this, she adds peach schnapps, or peach nectar if you're her little nephew Bryce, who sadly could not partake in cocktails at the time of this recording. He can now though, and he's bringing a great head of hair to the party. She also says to add 2 cups of mango nectar in it, but actually pours out way less than that. And also a whole bottle of white wine, because why even measure at all? We clearly aren't trying to remember this dinner party the next morning. And she stirs all that up together in her glass pitcher with her favorite cocktail tool, the wooden spoon. Look how excited she is while pouring it out.
Now for the taste test, the best part of the day.
The booze always brings out the light in her eyes. Never change, Aunt Sandy. Lush Lagoon. This is probably her most infamous cocktail for a few reasons. It is guaranteed to be a feast for the eyes and a bane to the liver. Sandy here is taking some mushed up kiwis and putting them inside. Is that an actual cocktail mixer? Have we moved on from the glass pitcher and wooden spoon technique?
No!
To these mushed kiwis, we are adding 2 shots of vodka.
Then 1 shot of melon liqueur.
Sandy, girl, that was 12 shots of vodka, and you know it. I heard that knowing little giggle. Yes, in Aunt Sandyland, 1 single shot is about half a Costco-sized bottle. At least she's self-aware. She also added a shot of some violently teal melon liqueur, and to add a great kick, just a little spoonful of jarred jalapeno juice. Yeah, Sandy, that's the thing in this recipe that's going to give it a kick. The single teaspoon of spicy pepper juice. Certainly not half a bottle of vodka or anything. And to finish, a couple drops of simple syrup. Sandy really said be careful with the syrup. We don't want to go overboard here, because we must protect our pancreas from diabetes. Liver cirrhosis, though, is completely acceptable. And we finally get to the mixing stage, which you would think would happen by her simply putting the lid on the shaker and start shaking it, but no. She stirs it with a fork for a few seconds, and then pours it out. Imagine actually using the drink shaker the way it was meant to be used. Sandy would never. So here we are with our lush lagoon. It looks radioactive. For garnish, Sandy plops in whole slices of kiwi in there, because why not have a fun surprise lurking at the bottom of your poorly mixed drink? Cheers to that. Peach lassi. In this episode of Sandra Lee's Exotic Kitchen Escapades, we bring you Peach Lassi from the distant shores of India.
Now, a lassi cocktail comes from India.
The entire Indian subcontinent is sobbing real tears at her pronunciation, by the way. I feel like I'm a border collie being called to heel. Here, Lassi!
It's cocktail time. It's the best time of the day.
She's so excited. We got some of Sandy's favorites here, both canned and frozen peaches, because everyone knows a good semi-ho girlie never uses fresh fruit. She adds the runniest looking vanilla yogurt I've ever seen in my life, and some peach vodka. In a surprising twist, she doesn't dump half the bottle in there this time. It's actually measured out to 1 cup, and it's only like 25% of this entire recipe? Sandy, what's going on here? Why are we suddenly using measurements for our alcohol? This is weird. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone here. She's so restrained with her vodka. This is not normal. Anyway, she blends it all up into a thick smoothie. A spiked East Indian smoothie, to be precise.
It's kind of like a spiked East Indian smoothie.
In all honesty, though, this recipe isn't half bad. A true lassi would have some cardamom or saffron in it, but yeah, it actually looks drinkable. At the very least, it won't give you alcohol poisoning. A rare W for Miss Sandra Lee. I'll take a lassi to go, please. Swamp water. In this episode, we are on the banks of the Mississippi River, and we are trying to make our drink match the color of the water. And where do we make this drink?
Now, we make it here in the pitcher.
I'm just going to show the original uploader's comment here for no reason at all. Yeah, this is not a cocktail for a fancy riverside dinner party. This is what you'd order at a bar right outside your college campus to immediately get sloshed out of your mind. Would this drink be worth using the fake ID? Probably yes if you're trying to drown your student debt-related sorrows. Probably not if you're trying to avoid liver disease before age 35. So, the ball's in your court. So, Sandy here has a pitcher of ice into which she's mixing some lime drink, which, do we know what that is? I'm not sure I know what lime drink means, but it looks like maybe Kool-Aid from the virulently green color. And then she dumps literally an entire bottle of apricot brandy. That is the whole bottle. That is the longest pour I've ever seen Sandy do. There is no way that's not the entire bottle of brandy in there. And then an almost equally long pour of lime vodka. Because clearly nobody is trying to remember this magical night on the Mississippi River. And a scant few splashes of lime juice in there. And stirs it all up in the pitcher, classic Sandy style with a wooden spoon. And there we have it, Shrek's Bane.
Yep, that's swamp water.
And remember, ladies,
To keep it simple, keep it sweet, keep it smart.
keep it swamp. Zengria. For the final cocktail of this video, we are on location in the Pacific Northwest. And our poison of choice this time is an Asian sangria. A Zengria.
I've got a Zengria that you are going to love. This is Asian inspired. It's kind of like an Asian sangria.
Because drinking this while standing in a pine forest will invoke feelings of calm and also the entire continent of Asia, which of course can be summarized with just a handful of ingredients. This recipe confuses me so much. She steeps green tea bags in Pinot Grigio, which makes no sense because red wine is such a strong flavor and green tea is not. I don't think this is going to do anything other than make the wine taste vaguely grassy, which I don't think was Sandy's intended effect here. We've got frozen cherries, canned lychee nuts, and mandarin oranges floating in there because, again, we want our cocktails to be choking hazards. And to top it all off, some plum wine. Look at how all that fruit just plops into the glasses and splashes everywhere. Perfection. I just want to point out the Schrodinger's tram going on in the background. 1 second it's there and the next it's not. I love it. Oh, to be one of the tram passengers, overlooking a beautiful lake and witnessing Aunt Sandy mixing an Asian sangria out in the wilderness. I love that Aunt Sandy is doing her part to bring cultural awareness to Middle America. Nothing says Asia like a pitcher of grassy Pinot Grigio filled with random stone fruits. And hey, I've also got a great semi-homemaker's tip for this recipe. Next time you try this, try adding a splash of soy sauce to it. It'll add a nice salty kick, tons of great flavor to your Asian sangria. Tablescapes. Now, shockingly, Sandy's one true love in life is not, in fact, cooking. No, Sandra Lee's real passion lies in the art of table decor. She famously didn't even want a cooking show to begin with. She wanted to do something focusing on home decor and gardening. But Food Network was like, no, sweetie, no. Let her cook. Sort of. But in each episode of Semi Homemade, Sandra did manage to include a segment that focused on getting creative at the dinner table. That's one word for it, anyway. So for the final section of this video, I'm going to go through some of Sandra's greatest tablescape hits. This first one is from that same comfort food episode I talked about earlier. Pretty sure this was supposed to be some sort of Thanksgiving/holiday season themed. So what is this pastel birdhouse city doing on the dinner table? Only Sandy knows. I love how none of the decor is even vaguely Thanksgiving. It just screams Easter luncheon. Imagine turning up at this dinner party at the end of November, trying not to knock down these massive birdhouse towers while passing overly sweet apple pie skillet back and forth. And there's this massive basket of colorful eggs next to you, doing its best to convince you that you actually fell asleep at the Thanksgiving dinner table and woke up in April. You've just skipped entire months of your life with no explanation whatsoever. The next tablescape is this one from the Peach Lassie episode. Sandra has whipped up an exotic setting for us. Yes, nothing screams India more than giant black candlesticks. I don't know, to me this says Italian Baroque? Forget the lassi, I feel like Aperol Spritz would be a more fitting cocktail here. I really want to know what kind of dishes would be on a paprika dinner menu though. Hold up. I think I saw tandoori chicken thighs on there. Never mind. I don't think I want to know anymore. Sandy back at it again, doing her bit to bring the world to Middle America. We love to see it. This next one is from the Riviera Trifle episode. Sandra has put together a table setting straight from the shores of Nice. Sandy, I think you may need to work on your geography a little there. That is not giving French Riviera in the slightest. That is giving hot dogs and lobster rolls, your cup of Italian ice melting onto the boardwalk while fireworks are bursting overhead. This is not French Riviera. This is 4th of July down the Jersey Shore. I said what I said. And here we have a riverside tablescape, the perfect venue for sipping your swamp water cocktails and letting all your worries wash away. Literally. I love that in all of Sandy's tablescapes, you can never see who's sitting across from you, which makes her dinner parties great news for introverts everywhere. Don't want to interact with a weird uncle who's been leering at you from across the table? Simply place every single houseplant you own right into the center of the table so as to block your view of him entirely. I also love that there's never any room for any food to be on the table whatsoever. There's just so much decor taking up every single inch of space. Also, her placemats here are made of little white stones. Can't imagine that being an issue when coming in contact with ceramics and glassware. Not at all. Her Zengria tablescape is similarly spectacular, in the sense that there's not a single practical thing about it, but at least it's on theme. I feel very zen staring at it. All that green moss and hanging branches. It's very calming, and even more so when you place open flame candles all over them. But these aren't just candles. According to Aunt Sandy, they are
3 candelabras from the craft store.
Nobody tell Lumiere. He'll have a horrible identity crisis. He's been living a lie. And now for Sandy's most unhinged tablescape to date. The Italian topiary garden table. Featuring a whole antique chair right on top of the table, covered in gold spray paint and artfully decked out in these golden tassels which have been stapled on and threaded through with giant plastic flower vines. The chair is somehow balancing on only 2 legs, and it's never explained how it came to be that way. She just found it in her magical craft store like that. There's just so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to begin. How about these massive crystal chandeliers that are hanging way too low? The mismatched gold leaf plates that look like Genovian dinner table rejects, the napkins with giant Fabergé eggs on them, the place card that says rich on it, Sandy's midnight velvet dinner jacket.
So I thought it required a nice dinner jacket. What do you think?
A lot is happening here. It looks like something Marie Antoinette would throw together in a drunken haze after indulging in too much cocktail time and eating too much cake. Let them eat angel food cake. Imagine being seated near the golden chair and trying to pass the salt across the table. It can't be done. You'll just have to sit there and contend with your sparsely seasoned food while scratching up your fingers on overly embellished egg napkins. This tablescape is just pure cinema. Nobody but Aunt Sandy could come up with anything like this, and I'm so blessed to be able to witness it with my own eyeballs, to know that something like this existed at one point in time. Life is beautiful. I know Sandy calls it Italian topiary garden, but I like to call it a seat at the table. Yeah, I don't think Aunt Sandy ever meant for her tablescapes to be used in a practical setting. Like, there's no way she thinks people would actually be able to serve meals with all these embellishments taking up valuable surface area. I think for her, creating these tablescapes are meant to be just that, an escape. And hey, I'll support crafting over mixing deadly cocktails any day. You keep on making those sky-high centerpieces, Sandy. Nobody wants to interact with each other at a dinner table anyway. Also, now that I'm looking at all of these different tablescapes, this must have been a pretty expensive show. I mentioned earlier that she has a KitchenAid stand mixer in every single color, but that paired with all these tablescapes and also redoing the kitchen decor every single time for each episode, and being on location for other episodes, Aunt Sandy was living large. The entire budget for Semi-Homemade seems to have gone towards aesthetics rather than actual recipe development, and I'm so here for it. And speaking of aesthetics, before I conclude this video, I wanted to show you guys some of my all-time favorite Aunt Sandy Halloween looks. There's this one where she dressed up as the Johnny Depp version of the Mad Hatter, and she's out here in the woods again, mixing wildly strong cocktails for a tea party, while her lampshade girlfriend looks on in horror. Or my favorite look of the bunch, where she's dressed here as Cher, wearing a giant black feather headdress, whipping up a batch of moon pies with a Party City teepee in the background. Also, there's a real-life horse behind her, trying to snack on the grass around it, but can't because its leash is too short for it to reach the ground.
And she always says,
I just want to point out that this aired in 2011. That it was even allowed to be on TV with all this going on is incredible to me. And finally, we have Sandra as a dead pirate lady from the 1400s with another poor unsuspecting animal companion. This time it's a ghostly white parrot. He's joined her in glorious afterlife and is protesting every second he has to watch her mix cocktails.
Spiced rum, that goes in here.
Together, they're mixing a drink featuring every specter's favorite ingredient, a large cup of milk, to which she adds rum, a whole lot of other booze, and stirs it all up with a feather quill. Delish. Again, I'm very happy Sandra Lee exists, and for all of her kitchen nightmares and mistakes, she seems like a genuinely sweet person despite everything she's been through, which has been a lot, apparently. She took care of her younger siblings growing up while her parents were out of the picture. She dealt with Andrew Cuomo for like 14 years, which explains so much about Cocktail Time. She successfully battled breast cancer a few years back and is now living her best life in Malibu, where she continues to feed us unhinged recipes and serves some absolute looks. Well guys, that's enough semi-homemade for one day. Thank you all for joining me on this adventure down the Sandra Lee rabbit hole. I hope by now you all see why a woman who can't make a single edible recipe is my favorite chef of all time. And if you too are a fellow semi-ho, let me know your favorite Sandra Lee dish in the comment section down below. I'll see you all next time. Bye!